All right, Matt Yoder, AwfulAnnouncing.com, joining us here on the Tim Fletcher Show. We are presented to you each and every single day by Holmes Honda, Holmes European, where, by the way, the Land Rover, Range Rover Evoque, if you haven't seen this, it is absolutely stunning. What Range Rover has done was elevate the old landscape of SUV from the Discovery, which you see enough of those driving around town. They're so cool. They're great retro SUVs. It, of course, evolved into the LR3, which is now the LR4. The Range Rover came about, which was an elevation from the original Range Rover, and now the Range Rover Sport has been redesigned. The LR2 is still roaming the streets, but if you haven't seen the Range Rover Evoque, please do yourself a favor and visit Holmes European, the home of Mercedes, Jaguar, Land Rover, and Volvo. Holmes Honda, Holmes European, all under the Holmes Auto Group umbrella as well. HolmesAutoGroup.com, supporting the Tim Fletcher Show every day of the week. If you want to, continue to text us on our Guy Pile line, 318-GUY Pile. Strictly by accident, Matt, we got that text number, but it works. It's the Tim Fletcher Show here on your 50,000-watt Hadron Collider of sports. We smash atoms like nobody's business. 50,000 watts of power, bringing you to 29. Did you know, Christy, we can be heard in 29 states?
So I mean, people like in, Wyoming can hear us?
I think that's one we avoid. We skip past it.
Okay.
How the weather skips past us because of the Air Force Base here, because they turn on their machines and all of a sudden the weather patterns kind of dissipate when they're approaching Shreveport, Bossier. Same thing happens with our radio signal near Wyoming. But we are heard in Ohio, for instance.
What?
Yeah.
What?
And Argentina. Yes. Basically the same locations.
What about my hometown of Culver City, California?
No.
Okay.
But if I looked on a map and I tried to tell you what is the Argentina of North America, I would say Ohio. And that's where we are joined now by our great friend. We go years back together, Matt Yoder, the managing editor of AwfulAnnouncing.com. Good morning, Matt Yoder. How are you doing, sir?
Good morning, Tim. I think depending on which way the wind's blowing, if I step outside, I think I can pick up your signal up here in the Buckeye State.
That's fantastic. Oh, there you go. Now be careful. It is an AM signal, so it can do some damage. It's like the cell phone in your pants pocket, what it might could do to you. Well, the same thing with our AM signal to your earwaves. Matt Yoder joins us now. And Matt, I've got to ask a question. First of all, I love the website. I am a guy who is addicted to AwfulAnnouncing.com. There are 4 or 5 websites that the first thing I do in the morning, I hit Twitter, I hit the Times-Picayune, I hit Deadspin, I hit AwfulAnnouncing.com, Pro Football Talk, and The Big Lead. So you guys are right there. You're batting 5th right now in my lineup, which is not a bad place to be. When did this come about? How did Awful Announcing come about?
Awful Announcing, it started way back in 2006. A guy named Brian Powell started up. It was really one of the first blogs to kind of hit the mainstream. The first version of the site sort of dropped off the radar in about 2010. That's when I got involved, and some of the folks with the Blogway Sports Network sort of picked it up, relaunched the site, rebooted it, had a whole deep staff to kind of carry it on, and we've sort of gone beyond what the original site did, and now we're putting up about maybe 8 to 10 articles a day, and the original site maybe to 3 or 4.
Yeah.
We're really putting out the content and all sorts of different things, sports ratings, announcing bloopers, announcing schedules, who's broadcasting what, basically anything that has to do with sports on television or radio, we've got you covered.
When you go to the website, they have the Mount Rushmore of Awful Announcing. And this, to me, I don't see anyone cracking these 4. I don't see any time for a makeover on the horizon, in the near future at least. If you could explain how the 4 who are on the Mount Rushmore of Awful Announcing got there, and is there anyone challenging Skip, Tim, Dickie V, and Pam?
Well, Pam Ward has a rich history with Awful Announcing for the PAMI Awards during college football season.
I love the PAMI Awards, and I look forward to the weekly ballots for the PAMI Awards are outstanding.
Exactly, where we honor the weirdest and the best quotes from college football season. Dick Vitale, I think it's pretty obvious why he's on there. He's just a crazy person. Actually, Dickie V, follows us on Twitter, which makes for some interesting conversations back and forth every now and then. Tim McCarver, who has no idea what Twitter is, and social media is the worst thing that's ever happened to mankind.
He thinks Twitter is something that let's see, I'm trying to think of so Pedro Borbon threw back in the '71 World Series.
Exactly, and then Skip Bayless actually won a tournament to go on Mount Rushmore. He replaced Craig James, who replaced Joe Morgan once those individuals left the booth. So he wanted someone current up there. Now, McCarver is retiring after this season, so we may have to have a Tim McCarver Memorial Tournament to get someone else up on there.
If there is anyone on the horizon that you see as a potential Mount Rushmore member to replace Tim McCarver, what are the prerequisites? What are the things that stick out to you guys at Awful Announcing that make you think, wait a minute, this isn't just bad announcing, this is awful announcing?
Well, we've always been a people-driven website.
You're people of the people. I understand that. Yeah.
Exactly. So whenever Chris Berman steps behind the mic, whether he's calling the Home Run Derby, whether he's doing highlights on SportsCenter or the U.S. Open golf coverage, our Twitter stream is just a running diary of what Chris Berman
is it a running diary or a running diarrhea? Because it's kind of the same thing with it, isn't it?
I suppose you could call it both.
Yes.
Sometimes it's a bit painful to watch what comes through.
It is.
But he's someone. Joe Buck is another person. I've actually turned around a bit on Joe Buck. I think he's gotten a lot better in the last couple of years. But he's someone who maybe doesn't reach the audience, and he's got kind of that dry, monotone delivery. So those are probably 1A and 1B of people.
We're having people text in, Matt, some suggestions. Where does Matt Millen fall as a potential Mount Rushmore member?
Oh, Matt Millen's definitely. I think he made the Final Four the last time we did a tournament.
Very good. So that means he would have a high draft choice the next year, which he would, of course, blow. So, all right.
Exactly. Yeah, and we may as well put Charles Rogers up there, maybe instead of Matt Millen, to pay tribute to his great work.
That's a very good point.
It's kind of amazing what happened with Matt Millen. He was a very good analyst when he worked way back with Fox.
Yes.
Stockton.
Yes.
Then he went to the Lions, and everything just blew up. He went back to TV, and he sort of took that Lions stink with him, and he covered NFL and college football. Now he's just doing college football, and the Penn State stuff really didn't work out for him.
No, his defense of Joe Paterno and the old Nittany Lion U didn't exactly fit in with the national psyche at that point.
And really, I think ESPN put him in such a terrible spot there. I mean,
why would they bring him out there? That's also very good. Why would you trot out a guy that you know is going to be waving the navy and white pom-poms? You know that. Exactly. It's almost like, Matt, that they kind of wanted him to.
Yeah, it's almost like they were setting him up in that situation to not even put him out there with someone else to sort of bounce off what Millen was saying. I think he'll overcome it, but I mean, talk about someone that doesn't really have a lot of credibility with the audience, just based upon what he's done in his GM career, based upon the Penn State stuff.
How can he be an expert at anything?
An excellent suggestion.
When you're
beyond drafting wide receivers in the first round of the draft and having them be busts, beyond having a winless NFL season, I don't know much else he can go.
I don't know. When you're looking for an analyst, and I love how ESPN now puts the resume of the guy that's, breaking down stuff, 3-time MVP, 2-time batting champion. What do they put up for Matt Millen now? I haven't noticed, but what do they put in the little shadow box, the lower third super, when he pops up on the screen as his resume? Likes Clark bars. What do they put under this guy?
Probably something about, he does have a pretty good mustache still.
Oh,
I guess you could give him that.
Gotta like the facial hair. Now we're getting...
You call him a retired, quote-unquote, GM, maybe.
Yeah, maybe so. Retired GM, that's not a bad... Former NFL player. There, that's not bad. Now, around our parts, Matt, we're, obviously football country, SEC. There are people who absolutely cannot stand Uncle Vern. What about Vern? You're in the Midwest, in the Buckeye State. Do you guys look at Vern Lundquist as the genial old uncle who kind of maybe gets drunk on the carcinogens from the turkey or whatever? Or what is that, carcinogens? That's cigarette smoke. What's in the turkey? Tryptophan.
Tryptophan?
Yeah, tryptophan. He gets a little loopy on tryptophan and cranberry wine or something and makes off-color jokes after the meal. Do y'all look at him as kind of the harmless guy, or do you look at Vern Lundquist as, oh boy, why does that guy still have a microphone in front of him?
I think if I saw him every week, if I lived in SEC country, I'd probably feel the latter. But seeing as how I'm not exposed to Vern for 3 hours every week, I have to look at him as the crazy, lovable uncle. Vern doesn't really even do play-by-play. He just kind of lets out explanation. Oh, my goodness. Oh,
and don't forget, Matt, the chortle every day.
He doesn't even really call the plays.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't call a play. He's like the grandfather. He's like the grandfather on 16 Candles. Grandpa's hyena is acting up. It's hernia.
It's better when he does basketball still raftery during the tournament, because that's a much faster paced game, and it's not really play by play. It's just kind of this conversation between these two old guys at a bar, and the game's kind of on in the background. So it's just different. It's different than the traditional straight play by play that you're used to.
It is. Now, let me ask you this: Matt Yoder, the managing editor for AwfulAnnouncing.com. If you guys haven't visited the website, if you're not following Awful Announcing on Twitter, please do so. You'll never have to research what game is on television, where will I find it on television ever again. These guys take care of that all for you. Plus, they have some really keen, funny insight, and trust me, during college football season, the PAMI Awards, it is one of the first things I look for. That I'll take it. I also look at EDSBS every day too. I love Every Day Should Be Saturday and Spencer Hall and what those guys do. But it is a must see. Bookmark the website, AwfulAnnouncing.com. You will not regret it. Now, we're getting a lot of requests here, Matt. Gary Danielson is awful. Bill Walton. Dan Deerdorf. Where is Dan Deerdorf fall on the scale here?
Dan Deerdorf, I think the closest thing I can say about him is he's probably CBS's version of Matt Millen. Someone who's been around for a long time, but someone who just doesn't really resonate with the audience anymore. Gary Danielson, I think he's finished in the top 3 or 4 of the PAMIs for the last 4 or 5 years, which is definitely an impressive streak.
He's like the Miss California. He's like always in contention.
Exactly. Now, Bill Walton, I love Bill Walton, and I will defend that man until the day that I die.
Now, see, I'm a Bill Walton guy as well, so that's good to hear.
He is just so over the top, so hilarious, so beyond out in outer space where any other announcer is. I mean, how could you not love someone that compares Tyreek Evans of the Sacramento Kings to Einstein, Da Vinci, and Steve Jobs? I mean, just off the top of his head. How could you not love that?
Now, are there times when you're watching Bill Walton and you think, okay, he's high. He's got to be high.
All the time.
Okay.
All the time.
All right, so it's not just me. It is, all right. I just want to make sure I'm not the only one. I didn't think I was the only one, but I just wanted to make sure that I was not the only one out there that sometimes believe that Bill may be doing the medicinal herbs for his back and may have overdone a little Pineapple Express prior to taking the mic in front of him here. So that's just one of those things. Now, granted, there are some really bad announcers out there, but, Matt, there are some guys who deserve some praise. I think that most people will agree one of the best shows on television and sports is TNT's NBA studio show. Where do you fall in that regard?
Absolutely. TNT's Inside the NBA show, I think that is the pinnacle of studio shows. You look at what ESPN's tried to do with their NBA show. I think they've tried to emulate a lot of what Turner does with Barkley and Kenny Smith and Ernie Johnson, of course. And I appreciate what they're trying to do, putting those NBA guys on the college set for the NCAA tournament. I just don't think they know enough about the college game since they cover the NBA all season. They can't really give that same dynamic that they give on Inside the NBA. What makes that show so great, it's kind of missing when they go to the NCAA tournament. But I think when you look at inside the NBA, College Game Day for ESPN, those are the top two studio shows. I'd even put Football Night in America up there with Dan Patrick, with Tony Dungy, and Rodney Harrison. I think you can pick any of those three for the best studio show right now on television.
Okay, I'll agree with that. I think Dan Patrick's just solid wherever he goes, whether it's his show, which, by the way, follows our show here on 1130 The Tiger, or if, his television work. I think Dan Patrick is about as solid as there is out there.
Yeah, and I think Tony Dungy and Harrison both have really grown as analysts, and they do something that not a lot of the other networks do. They have that toned-down studio show where it's just a few guys,
right.
And I think that's what makes that show work. When you look at ESPN and Fox and CBS, they're trying to cram 12, 20, 35 guys on set.
I've seen 35 guys on set, yes. It's 30. The 35-guy set was just one too many. Yeah.
I think if ESPN took their entire set of NFL analysts, they could probably still form a team. They could probably beat the Chiefs.
They could beat the Chiefs, and they would have a pretty good two-deep. They may have to make some cuts. The Turk may have to actually be employed on the ESPN set to bring your scripts with you. Come into the office. We need to visit with you. This portion of the show brought to you by the good folks over at Cantina Laredo. Going to be a little chilly for the patio today, but they'll have the heaters on out there, but it may be a little rainy. So it's not a bad idea to park it inside, grab one of those more than comfortable booths, have some of the best wait staff in the possible in the region to take care of your every need, and then enjoy the carnitas, the pork that just falls off the bone, so tender, so tasty, absolutely delicious. Cantina Laredo and the shops at Bellmead. Matt Yoder joins us. Where are you in Ohio exactly, Matt?
Columbus, actually, right about 10 minutes away from the Ohio State University.
Is that where you graduated from?
Actually, no, I graduated up the road at Ohio Wesleyan University. The Ohio Wesleyan University, I guess.
The OHWU. Bringing it. What's Ohio Wesleyan's mascot?
We are the Battling Bishops. Very proud of our
You know what?
heritage.
I have heard of Ohio Wesleyan Battling Bishops. There's not a lot of Battling Bishops out there.
Not a lot. There's a few of us, but we are very proud of our heritage tradition and our cookie mascot.
Now, let me ask you, Matt, you would think that Ohio Wesleyan Battling Bishops would have one hell of a chess team.
Actually, I don't even know if we have a chess team. We're actually probably known more for soccer and lacrosse. That's probably our two.
Lacrosse is actually a sport that has gained traction down here in the last 10 years or so.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun sport to watch. I never got to play as a kid because I'm too old, and the only thing we got to play with sticks is when our parents, swatted us on the rear end with them. But yeah, it looks like fun. Be able to go out there and berate people with a stick and tackle people and push people around. The ball hurts though, dude. When it hits, that is a tough, hard ball.
Yeah, I suppose, I've watched every sport, for my work with AwfulAnnouncing. I watch a lot of sports. I've watched darts, Australian rules, football, cricket even. We've had a couple of them. I have still yet to understand the rules of lacrosse, so.
Yeah, there we go.
That one is beyond
and it's, of course, North America's oldest sport.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dickie V called the very first game, I believe, way back when.
If only lacrosse had a Dickie V to champion it to the masses, where would it be in its popularity today?
He's a PTP. 320-1130 is our phone number. You can text us on Guy Pile, 318-GUY-PILE, if you have any questions for Matt Yoder, the managing editor of AwfulAnnouncing.com. And I looked up the top 10 from the final week of the season last year for the PAMI Awards. Ray Bentley, number 10. Chaminade sounds like an exotic beverage. Mike Patrick, he's always in your top 10, by the way. Mike Patrick's
a very consistent performer in the PAMI league.
Mike Patrick is that 280 hitter that's going to give you 21 home runs and about 80 RBI, 980 fielding percentage. Just a good, solid performer. You want in your lineup every day. And Mike Patrick, a windy, cold day. The old coldie. Didn't know that was an atmospheric condition. And then there's Jesse Palmer apologizing for showing the hook 'em horns upside down. Lighthearted, zero disrespect to Longhorn Nation, some of the best fans in college football. How much did ESPN, how much pressure was there on him to make that apology?
Well, since ESPN owns the Longhorn Network, I'm sure the phone call was pretty quick to the booth.
And instead of the red phone, it was more than likely the burnt orange phone, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Carter
so
Blackburn.
Very quick, forced apology.
Yeah, Carter Blackburn. Not familiar with Carter Blackburn, but he said, and Pedano's field goal is up and no good. Correction. It's good. It doesn't matter what I thought. As a referee, he's got the call right. And then there's Herbie. Herbie doesn't make the list very often. Watch him use his eyes to look this way. I don't even know what that means. Tom Rinaldi interviewing Manti Te'o, getting congratulations from Matt Barkley. There's a difference there in those two, I think. I believe I'd be able to differentiate Matt and Charles Barkley. Maria Taylor said, Landry Jones has 2 words for him. Thank you, man. I like that one. That would be 3 words. And then Matt Millen. Here we go. I haven't read this yet. I'm reading these cold, so if you know what I'm getting ready to read, Matt, and stop me from losing our FCC license, let me know.
I think you're good.
Okay. Offensively, when you run the quarterback, it's like an extra man because defensively you don't account for him. He is absolutely an idiot, isn't he? He is just...
I think there's other people in the ESPN hierarchy that maybe deserve a shot at the booth at Mr. Millen.
Yeah, maybe so. Andre Ware is another one that's not exactly stellar, but this is his astute analysis last year. Tennessee is a pretty good defensive team. Oh, by the way, Tennessee allowed 35 points a game and was the 108th scoring defense in the country. And Desmond Howard to David Pollock, not sipping that beaver juice anymore. Oh, boy.
Yeah, that one you might want to have been.
Yeah, so Desmond Howard and David Pollock, oh, boy. Sometimes when people have an open mic, they just don't know what to say. And they just say it, and they spit it out, and they don't realize, wait a minute, there are other people that can hear this? I just said the field goal, no good, good, and the catch is good, no good, the touchdown, no incomplete, or touchdown interception. Those are the miscommunications that seem that announcers make more often than anything.
Yeah, and I think over the course of the season, you're going to see that from, you're going to see 1 or 2 mistakes like that. I think what separates, people that show up every week in the Tammys from someone like Herb Street, who only shows up now and then, is the consistency, how often they can deliver a broadcast without maybe some of those goofy sound bites. Like Mike Patrick, you watch a game that he does and you scratch your head 3 or 4 times every game. What is he really trying to say here? But I think consistency is the key thing we're looking for with announcers. You realize being on live TV for that many hours at a time, you're going to make 1 or 2 mistakes. That's just a given. I mean, no announcer's perfect, but how often you can sort of stay away from those is what we're looking for from the best announcers out there.
Well, you look at how many games that, some of these I notice are submissions from readers. In other words, of the PAMI Award list every Saturday, how many do you guys get from people watching around the country and say, hey, look, this just happened. Mike Patrick just said this. Or here on a regional telecast out here in Arizona, you guys may not be getting this in Ohio, in Columbus, but, dude, you can't believe what just happened here.
Yeah, about 90% of our quotes come from our readers, and That's where our Twitter following is just invaluable to the website. And the Pennies really give a way to get our readers, our followers involved. If you're out there listening, follow us at AwfulAnnouncing. That's my shameless plug for our Twitter page. But that's really where we get most all of our Pennies from, because there's going to be games that we can't see. There's going to be quotes that we miss, and we have people all around the country that write for the website. But we're going to miss things from time to time, so that's when our Twitter following really comes into handy, because they'll deliver the quotes to us. And I know what quote's going to do really well, how many times I see it tweeted into us. Like when Lee Corsa dropped the F-bomb on College Game Day, I think we may have got about 200 replies. Just, hey, did you see this? Did you read?
Oh, boy.
And you've got to get video of that, or Bauer's going to win the Jammies this week. So that'll give you a pretty good indication of how good a coach's going to do in the Jammies from week to week.
Well, it's, yeah, and as a matter of fact, that's just texted in. What about last year on game day when Lee Corso said, blanket? And, yes, that's the one that we're talking about right now, where Lee Corso, again, sometimes you don't quite realize what these guys, you talk for a living, and occasionally you're going to say something that you wish you had back, but there are some that are so consistently bad, it's amazing. Now, you also have on your website today the ongoing feud between Michelle Beadle and Aaron Andrews. What's the genesis of that feud, and where has it gone, and why are these two quarreling?
Well, they both worked together back at ESPN a couple of years ago before Beadle moved to NBC and Andrews moved to Fox. And I don't think anyone really knows the genesis of the feud, quote unquote. But, when Beadle's asked about Aaron Andrews or vice versa, it's made pretty clear that the two don't run around in the same circles and that the two aren't friends from their time together at ESPN. And I don't know what the history there is, but it's definitely a professional rivalry between the two. I don't know how personal it is. I don't know if maybe they bumped into each other in the cafeteria one day up in Bristol way back when. But it's definitely carried on. Beadle talked about Aaron Andrews on a radio show in, I think, New York yesterday, and there's a camera in the studio, and Andrews comes up and she gives the big old thumbs down to her. So there's definitely still some hard feelings there between the two. I don't think Andrews has spoken very publicly about Michelle Beadle, but Beadle's great. She'll answer pretty much any question that you ask her. She has no filter when it comes to answering questions. Well, there's something that's happened there in the past, and even to this day, there's definitely no love lost between the two.
It seems like female sportscasters and females in the broadcasting world kind of fall under a little bit more scrutiny from the guys that are longtime sports fans. Do you guys pick up on that as a site that, basically is, based on broadcasting? Michelle Beadle has struck a chord with fellas around the country. They have fallen for this girl because she is like the girl that you want to hang out with kind of situation. From Charissa Thompson to Michelle Beadle to Aaron Andrews, where do you guys get the reaction that this woman is accepted as a qualified sports broadcaster and this woman is more like Pam Ward? I mean, where's that spectrum right now?
I think Beadle definitely is probably one of the most popular women involved in sports broadcasting. I think they have it hard because not only do you have to deliver the goods and be good at your job, but, with the sports blogosphere, with working on college campuses, there's definitely the attractive quality to a lot of the female sportscasters out there. And I think that's why you saw once Aaron Andrews left ESPN, there was all the talk, well, who's going to be the next Aaron Andrews?
Right.
Who's going to step into those shoes? It was Samantha Steele, who's now Samantha Ponder after marrying the Vikings quarterback, Christian Ponder. But I don't really think that's I don't really think that's fair to a lot of these female sportscasters. Typecasting them in that Aaron Andrews role, they have to be their own person. So I think when Sam Ponder stepped in there, she couldn't be Aaron Andrews. She had to be herself. And I think she really took on that role and added her own unique qualities to it. Has done a great job so far in her first year. I look at someone like Doris Burke, who calls NBA games as an analyst, as a female analyst up in there. Does a great job calling NBA, college basketball, women's college basketball for ESPN. I think ultimately, if you're good at your job, you're going to get the respect that your work deserves. I think we're advanced enough as a society to accept a female sportscaster calling men's basketball. I still get a few tweets from the Stone Age wondering what the heck's going on there.
Right.
But I think as long as your work is up to par, male or female, you deserve to be there and you'll be accepted.
Matt Yoder, the managing editor of Awful Announcing, joins us now. And Matt, before we close this out, you're a Saints fan. You grew up in Ohio. You went to Ohio Wesleyan. You live in Columbus, for Pete's sake. You're in Browns and Bengal territory. Well, there's a reason right there, I guess. But why in the world are you a Saints fan, and how did that come about?
I asked this question to my ma and pa, and I don't know if there's an explanation for it. I've just always been a New Orleans Saints fan. That has always been my team of choice, my team of teams. From the time I was born, I guess. I came out of the womb with the fleur-de-lis, I suppose. But the teams that I grew up with, Bobby Hebert, Eric Martin was my favorite player growing up, Dalton Hilliard, the Dome Patrol. I mean, that was the team that I grew up with. Maybe it was because I lived in Browns and Bengals country and just attached myself to someone. And, well, I guess the Saints really didn't reward me through a lot of my childhood.
Yeah, no lie.
But, I stuck with them through thick and thin, and I think I bought probably every piece of Super Bowl 44 memorabilia that there is known to man. If I'm missing one, someone please let me know. But I've got the posters, the videos, the sweatshirts, all that. But I don't know why I grew up a Saints fan. I just did. That's kind of how it's always been. My pay for my third Christmas, there I am getting a little Saints football. So
wow.
I just accepted it. I've been in love with the team since my earliest days, I guess.
What Saints jerseys do you have right now?
Well, right now I've got Eric Martin. That was probably my big purchase. I got the first one I got was a Ricky Williams jersey. That's kind of fallen by the way.
That's a little regrettable, yeah.
Aaron Brooks, who...
That's a little regrettable.
We had a good run with Aaron Brooks, though. I couldn't forget.
But I hated him, Matt, because every time he would throw an interception, he would flash that smile that made me think, he's on the take. He's on the take. Someone's paying him. I know he is because he's laughing about that interception. I showed up for Saints training camp to cover the Saints the year after they got rid of Aaron Brooks. And Olindo Mare walks out at Millsaps University wearing number 2, and I think I may have actually crapped my pants. I was like, oh, no, he's back. He's back and he's shrunk. Oh, no, this is not good.
I choose to remember the good times instead of the times he was throwing the ball backwards.
Oh, gosh, the backwards throw. He'll never live that down, and rightfully so. Oh, yeah, Matt, I can't believe you were defending Aaron Brooks. This is gut-wrenching to me. So you got Eric Martin and Aaron Brooks. Ricky Williams.
I've got Deuce McAllister.
The man who gave both knees to the Crescent City.
Yep. So those 2 running backs, and then I've got Drew Brees, and to complete the collection, Tracy Porter, because of what he did in the NFC Championship game in the Super Bowl. So that's my entire collection.
Not bad.
I'm hoping to add, Pat Soling, Ricky Jackson, maybe even a Sam Mill for the collection one of these days.
Ooh, get the entire Dome Patrol. That would be all right.
Exactly. But, I'm hoping maybe, Victor Butler comes in. Maybe he'll be worth getting a jersey someday. Maybe, Marquise Mingo, I know probably the folks down there hoping he's there in the middle of the first round this year. So
we're still kind of, I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence with Barkevius. I think Barkevius is an outstanding athlete, but I'm trying to figure out where exactly, if he would be a great, now that they're going to be in a 3-4, is he really going to be strong enough? I know he's fast enough. I know he's got the athleticism to be an outside linebacker, but is he big enough to be an outside linebacker? And I'm just a little concerned. I don't know. We're also a little concerned down here about who's protecting Drew's backside now. They're basically saying, hey, we'll take anybody who can play left tackle for us. We don't really necessarily have to have a proven veteran. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, your $20 million a year quarterback is getting pummeled from behind. So that, to me, is a huge concern this year.
Left tackle probably is the one worrisome spot for me, but I think if you look at this team over the past few years, I mean, they've lost linemen.
I know.
And survived.
I know.
And they've lost Jeff Fain, Jonathan Goodwin came and went. Even Carl Nix, Ben Grubbs, I thought was solid last year. I don't think he was at that Pro Bowl level. But I think, this team has shown that they can plug in guys on that line and make it work. Zach Streif at right tackle. I mean, he was a backup for several years before the starting role. So I think you've got Brown there from USC. I mean, he was a second-round pick a couple of years ago. So maybe he can be plugged in. But I think when you look at the track record, and maybe the one thing that concerns me is not who's stepping in and playing, but, replacing Aaron Cromer, who was such a great line coach. He goes to Chicago now to be the offensive coordinator up there for Mark Trestman. Maybe that's what worries me more than a particular player that's going to be plugged in there is, will that line as a whole, as a unit, play as good as they have the last several years.
I completely agree. Once you lose a position coach that does his job well, and I think that when, you have a different wide receiver coach last year, when Johnson goes to Tulane, I think that it was a detriment to guys like Devery had an off season to me. I think, Colston, for whatever reason, I thought, played well when he wasn't hurt. But it just seemed like every position coach that we've had at the Saints that did a really good job, once they leave, it seemed like there's been a downgrade, and that's a little on the concerning side. So when last year rolls around, down here, Roger Goodell's name was basically a 4-letter word. Where do you stand on Roger Goodell and his treatment of the Saints?
I try to look at it, since I do write about sports, I try to look at it impartially a bit, and I think Goodell may be the worst human being walking the planet. That's my impartial perspective. He may even be worse than Skip Bayless. From a partial Saints fan perspective, I probably couldn't share what I actually think about Goodell on the radio. I may work towards losing your SEC license there, but I really think that it was over the top, and especially how the players, how their suspensions were handled, and just the rush to judgment and the rush to catch Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis and the franchise. And I think, thankfully, over the course of time, the narrative kind of changed in the national media and realized that Goodell really overstepped his bounds with how harshly he punished the Saints. And, I was hoping that they'd find some way to rally together, and there was some way Goodell would present the Lombardi Trophy in the Superdome to Tom Benson. It didn't happen, so Sean Payton's just going to have to exact his revenge this year on Roger Goodell, and hopefully we'll see him present that Super Bowl trophy to the Saints sooner rather than later.
In the snowy New Jersey wintry morn. Or late night.
Maybe not this year, considering the whole cold weather thing, but hopefully in the next 2 or 3 years, or hopefully, we'll get some nice weather in New York come next February.
That would be nice, but we know it's not going to happen. Although Goodell, with his deal with the devil, very well may be able to get a nice day for the good folks there in New York and New Jersey and all that area. Matt Yoder, the managing editor of AwfulAnnouncing.com. Matt, we've really enjoyed this. Love the website. And you probably will be getting an email or a phone call from me again in the very near future to join us. Really enjoyed the visit, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And, hey, nothing better that I enjoy more than talking Saints football. So happy to come on with you, and hope to do it again sometime.
Sounds good, Matt. Well, enjoy your day there in beautiful Columbus, Ohio, and we will be in touch soon.
All right, take care.
All right, man, take care. Matt Yoder, AwfulAnnouncing.com, joining us here on the Tim Fletcher program.